Rain hammered the black iron gates. A woman in faded scrubs stepped off the bus at dawn, coffee gone cold in her shaking hands. Inside that mansion waited Chicago's most feared mafia kingpin, a man who hadn't spoken in 3 years. Every morning she bathed him, dressed him, fed him. Every morning he watched her in silence. Then one night she broke in front of him, and for the first time in 3 years, his hand moved. Impossible, deliberate, terrifying. This is a story about a caregiver who fell in love with a monster pretending to be broken, and the truth that nearly destroyed them both. If you want to see how this ends, stay with me until the final word. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Beside. The bus doors hissed shut behind Zara Okoye at 5:47 in the morning, leaving her standing alone on a street that didn't belong to people like her. Rain came down in sheets, soaking through her secondhand scrubs within seconds. She clutched a travel mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, her fingers numb around the plastic. The Vallecrest estate rose ahead like something out of a Gothic nightmare. Black iron gates, stone walls slick with rain, windows that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. She was 32 years old, plus-sized, black, exhausted down to her bones, the kind of woman the world looked through before it ever looked at, the kind of woman no one noticed until they needed something from her. Zara pressed the buzzer. Static crackled. No voice came through, just the metallic click of the gate unlocking. She pushed through, shoulders hunched against the downpour, and walked up the long driveway toward the mansion. Her sneakers were worn so thin she could feel every pebble beneath her feet. This was her 3rd month working for Lucien Vey. 3 months of bathing a man who couldn't move, dressing him, feeding him, talking to him like he was still human. 3 months of silence. The front door opened before she reached it. Laurent Kane stood in the doorway, Lucien's consigliere, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Zara's car. He didn't smile. "You're late," Kane said. "Bus was delayed." Zara stepped inside, water dripping onto marble floors that cost more per square foot than her rent. Storm. "He's awake." "He's always awake." Kane's expression didn't shift. "Breakfast is in the kitchen. He takes his tea at 6:30. Don't forget to adjust the temperature. Last time it was too hot." It was 1 degree off. 1 degree matters to Mr. Vey. Zara bit back a response. She'd learned early on that arguing with Kane was like arguing with a brick wall, pointless and exhausting. She nodded, peeled off her soaked jacket, and headed down the hall toward the kitchen. The Vallecrest estate was a maze of marble and shadow. Chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they disappeared into darkness. Portraits of dead men lined the walls. The air smelled like old money and older violence. Zara had grown up in subsidized housing on the south side. This place felt like a different planet. She prepared Lucien's breakfast with mechanical efficiency. Oatmeal with honey and cinnamon. Toast cut into quarters. Tea steeped for exactly 4 minutes, cooled to 160 degrees. She arranged everything on a tray and carried it upstairs to his room. The door was already open. Lucien Vey sat in his wheelchair by the window, staring out at the rain. He was 41 years old but looked older. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair going gray at the temples, a face carved from stone. He wore tailored pajamas that probably cost more than Zara's entire wardrobe. His hands rested motionless on the armrests. His eyes tracked nothing. Zara set the tray on the table beside him. "Morning," she said. Silence. She didn't expect a response. She never did. "Looks like the storm's not letting up." Zara pulled a chair over and sat down. "Traffic's going to be hell later. Not that you care about traffic anymore, I guess." Nothing. She picked up the spoon and dipped it into the oatmeal. "Open up." Lucien's jaw didn't move. Zara sighed. This was the routine. Every morning, the same resistance. She'd learned to wait him out. Eventually, his mouth would open. Not because he wanted to, but because his body needed fuel to survive. That's what the doctors said anyway. Autonomic response, muscle memory, nothing conscious. "Come on," Zara coaxed. "Don't make me sing. You know I can't carry a tune." Still nothing. She started humming anyway. Some old Motown song her mother used to play on Sunday mornings. Zara couldn't remember the name, but the melody was buried deep enough in her bones that it came out without thinking. Lucien's mouth opened, just a crack. Zara fed him slowly, one spoonful at a time. She wiped his chin when oatmeal dribbled down. She held the tea to his lips and tipped it carefully so he wouldn't choke. The whole process took 40 minutes. "There," she said when the tray was empty. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" Lucien stared past her at the rain. Zara stood and stretched, her back aching from the awkward angle. "All right, bath time." She wheeled him into the adjoining bathroom, all black marble and gold fixtures, a bathtub the size of a small pool. She ran the water hot, tested it with her elbow, then began the process of undressing him. This part never got easier, not because of modesty. Zara had been a nurse for 8 years before taking this job. She'd seen every kind of body imaginable. But there was something deeply uncomfortable about undressing a man who had once been one of the most powerful criminals in Chicago, a man who had ordered executions with a phone call, a man whose name still made people flinch. She unbuttoned his shirt, peeled it off his shoulders, unbuckled his belt. Lucien's eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. "You know," Zara said as she worked, "sometimes I wonder what you're thinking about in there. If you're thinking at all, or if it's just nothing. Static." She lifted him out of the wheelchair, dead weight, awkward and heavy, and lowered him into the tub. Water sloshed over the sides. "The doctors say your brain activity is normal. That means you're conscious, aware, trapped inside a body that won't move." Zara lathered soap between her hands. "I don't know if that's better or worse than just being gone." She washed him methodically, arms, chest, back. She'd done this so many times it didn't register anymore. Just another task. Just another morning. "My ex used to say I talked too much," Zara continued, scrubbing his shoulders. "Said I filled every silence with noise because I was afraid of what people might say if I gave them space." She paused. "Maybe he was right. Maybe I'm just talking to fill the void. You're not listening anyway." Lucien blinked. Zara rinsed the soap off and drained the tub. She toweled him dry, dressed him in fresh clothes, and wheeled him back to the window. The whole routine took an hour and a half. "All right," she said, pulling her phone out to check the time. "I've got to run some errands. Kane wants me to pick up your prescriptions and stop by the tailor to grab your suits. You good here for a couple hours?" No response. "Yeah, thought so." Zara grabbed her jacket and headed downstairs. Kane met her in the foyer with an envelope full of cash and a list written in neat cursive. She skimmed it. Pharmacy, tailor, butcher. Apparently Lucien Vey still ate like royalty even if he couldn't feed himself. "Be back by noon," Kane said. "Got it." Zara stepped outside into the rain and walked back toward the bus stop. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, squinting at the screen through water droplets. A notification from the dating app she'd been using for the past 6 months. "Marcus has unmatched with you." Zara's stomach dropped. She opened the app with shaking hands. Sure enough, the conversation was gone. 3 weeks of messages. Late-night talks. Plans to meet for coffee this weekend. Gone. She scrolled up to their last exchange, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Marcus. "Send me a full body pic?" Zara. Photo. Marcus. And then nothing. Zara stood in the rain, staring at her phone, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation creeping up her throat. This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. She'd learned to expect it. That moment when a man saw all of her and decided she wasn't enough. Too fat, too dark, too much. She shoved her phone back in her pocket and kept walking. Bex. The pharmacy was crowded. Zara waited in line for 20 minutes, half-soaked and miserable, clutching Lucien's prescription papers. When she finally reached the counter, the pharmacist barely looked at her. "Insurance?" he asked. "It's private pay." "Name?" "Lucien Vey." The pharmacist's hands froze. He looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "You work for him?" "I'm his nurse." A pause. Then the pharmacist grabbed the papers and disappeared into the back. Zara waited, arms crossed, trying to ignore the stares from other customers. Everyone in Chicago knew the name Lucien Vey. Everyone knew what he'd done before the accident that left him paralyzed. The pharmacist returned with a bag full of pill bottles and handed them over without another word. Zara left quickly. The tailor was worse. The old man who ran the shop looked at her like she'd crawled out of a sewer. He handed over the suits wrapped in plastic without speaking, then locked the door behind her the second she stepped outside. By the time Zara made it to the butcher, she was ready to quit. The butcher, at least, was polite. He packaged up Lucien's order: steaks, lamb chops, chicken breasts, and even smiled when he handed it over. "You take care now," he said. It was the first kind thing anyone had said to her all morning. Zara almost cried. Neck. She got back to the mansion just before noon. Kane met her at the door and took the bags without thanking her. Zara climbed the stairs to Lucien's room, exhausted and hollowed out. He was still by the window, still staring, still silent. Zara dropped into the chair beside him and let out a long breath. Rain streaked down the glass. The room smelled like lavender and expensive cologne. "You know what the worst part is?" Zara said quietly. "It's not the stairs. It's not the insults. It's the silence. The moment they decide you're not worth responding to." She looked at Lucien's profile. Sharp jaw, dead eyes. "You don't have to respond either," she said. "But at least you're stuck here. At least you don't have a choice." Her phone buzzed again. Another unmatch, another rejection. Zara laughed bitterly. "Yeah, at least you don't have to deal with this shit." She stood and walked to the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the silence pressed down like a weight on her chest. "Why am I never enough?" she whispered. The words came out before she could stop them. "Why does everyone look at me and see someone unlovable?" Her voice cracked. "What's wrong with me?" Silence. Always silence. Zara closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. And then, a sound. Soft. Almost imperceptible. The creak of a wheelchair. Zara's eyes snapped open. She turned slowly. Lucien's hand was no longer resting on the armrest. It was raised, fingers curled, reaching toward her. Zara's breath stopped. "What the—" The hand dropped back onto the armrest. Lucien's face remained expressionless. His eyes stared past her like nothing had happened. But it had. Zara stumbled backward, her heart pounding. "Did you just—" Nothing. "Lucien?" Silence. She waited, pulse hammering in her ears, but the moment was gone. Lucien sat motionless, completely still, exactly as he'd been for the past 3 months. Zara's hands shook. She must have imagined it. Exhaustion, stress, her mind playing tricks. Except she hadn't imagined it. She knew what she'd seen. Zara didn't tell Kane. She didn't tell anyone. For the rest of the day, she moved through her tasks on autopilot, cooking Lucien's meals, administering his medications, adjusting his wheelchair. But every few minutes she glanced over at him, searching for another sign. Nothing. By evening, she'd almost convinced herself it had been a hallucination. Almost. At 8 o'clock, Zara prepared Lucien for bed. She changed him into fresh pajamas, brushed his teeth, and transferred him from the wheelchair to the mattress. He weighed a ton. She always ended up sweating by the time she got him settled. "There," she said, pulling the blankets up to his chest. "Comfortable?" No response. Zara hesitated. Then, before she could stop herself, she leaned down and looked directly into his eyes. "If you can hear me," she said quietly, "move your hand again." 5 seconds passed. 10. Nothing. Zara straightened. "Yeah, thought so." She turned off the lights and headed for the door. "Good night, Lucien." As she reached the threshold, she heard it. A breath, sharper than the others, deliberate. Zara froze, her hand on the doorframe. She looked back. Lucien's eyes were open in the darkness, and they were staring directly at her. Zara didn't sleep that night. She lay in the small guest room Kane had assigned her on the first floor, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in her head. The hand, the breath, the eyes. Something was wrong, or something was very, very right. At 3 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and crept upstairs. Lucien's door was closed. She pressed her ear against it, listening. Silence. Zara opened the door slowly. Lucien was exactly where she'd left him, flat on his back, eyes closed, breathing steady. But the wheelchair had moved, just an inch, maybe less. Zara's pulse spiked. She walked over to it, crouched down, and examined the floor. No scuff marks, no sign of anyone pushing it. She looked at Lucian. "Did you move this?" Nothing. Zara reached out and touched his hand. It was warm, solid. "If you can hear me," she whispered, "I need to know." Lucien's pinky finger twitched. Zara jerked backward, her breath catching. "Oh my God." The finger moved again, slowly, deliberately, once, then stopped. Zara stood there, shaking, staring at the man who wasn't supposed to be able to move, the man who had just responded. "You're not paralyzed," she breathed. Lucien's eyes opened, and for the first time in 3 years he looked directly at her. Not through her, at her. "No," he said. His voice was rough, cracked, barely audible, but it was real. Zara stumbled back against the wall, her legs giving out. She slid to the floor, staring at him in shock. "You've been faking." Lucian's jaw tightened. "Yes, for 3 years. Yes, why?" He didn't answer. Zara's mind raced. 3 years. 3 years of silence. 3 years of pretending. 3 years of letting her bathe him, dress him, feed him like he was helpless. "You let me—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Why?" Lucien's gaze didn't waver. "Because I was hiding." "From what?" "From everyone." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Lucien's eyes snapped toward the door. "Someone's coming." "Who?" "Get out," he said, his voice sharp. "Now." "But—" "Zara, go." She scrambled to her feet just as the door opened. Kane stood in the doorway, his expression cold. "What are you doing here?" Zara's heart pounded. "I thought I heard something." Kane's eyes flicked to Lucian, then back to her. "Get some rest. You have an early shift tomorrow." It wasn't a suggestion. Zara nodded quickly and slipped past him into the hall. She didn't look back. But as she walked away, she heard Kane's voice, low and dangerous. "Was that necessary?" And Lucian's response, quieter. "She needed to know." The next morning, Zara arrived at the mansion with 1,000 questions and no answers. Kane met her at the door, his face unreadable. "Mr. Vey wants to see you," he said. Zara's stomach dropped. "Why?" He didn't say. She followed Kane upstairs, her hands trembling. When they reached Lucien's room, Kane opened the door and gestured for her to enter. Lucien sat in his wheelchair by the window, exactly as he had every other morning. But everything was different now. Kane closed the door behind her. Zara stood there, frozen, staring at the man who had been lying to her for months. "Sit," Lucian said. His voice was stronger today, clearer. Zara sat. Lucian turned his wheelchair to face her. His eyes were sharp, calculating. The eyes of a man who had once ruled an empire. "You want answers," he said. "Obviously." "Then listen carefully, because I'm only going to explain this once." Zara nodded, her pulse racing. Lucien leaned forward slightly. 3 years ago, someone tried to kill me. They murdered my wife and daughter. They burned my home to the ground. Everyone assumed I'd die from my injuries. "But you didn't." "No, I survived, but barely." His jaw tightened. "When I woke up in the hospital, I realized something. If I stayed in the game, they'd finish what they started. So I made a choice." "You pretended to be paralyzed." "Yes, and everyone believed you. Everyone had to." Zara's mind spun. "Why tell me now?" Lucien's gaze softened, just slightly. "Because you asked me why you're not enough." The words hit her like a punch. "And I couldn't let you believe that," he continued quietly. "Not when the truth is that you're the only person who's treated me like I still matter." Zara's throat tightened. "For 3 years, everyone in this house looked at me like I was already dead," Lucian said. "Everyone except you." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. "You talked to me," he said. "You sang to me. You told me about your day. You made me feel human again." "I didn't know." "I know." Lucian's expression hardened. "And that's exactly why I'm telling you this now, because what comes next is going to be dangerous. and you need to decide if you're willing to stay." "What do you mean?" "The people who tried to kill me are coming back." Zara's blood ran cold. "And when they do," Lucien said, "they're going to burn this place to the ground." Bon. Before Zara could respond, the lights went out. The entire mansion plunged into darkness. Somewhere downstairs, glass shattered. Lucien's hand shot out and grabbed Zara's wrist. "Don't move," he whispered. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, heavy, multiple. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Who?" "Quiet." The footsteps stopped outside the door. A voice called out, low and mocking. "Lucien Vey, we know you're in there." Zara's breath froze. The door exploded inward. 3 men stepped through the splintered door frame. The first carried a shotgun. The second held a handgun with a silencer. The third just smiled, the kind of smile that promised broken bones and shallow graves. Lucien's grip on Zara's wrist tightened. "Stay behind me," he whispered. "You can't even—" "I said stay behind me." The man with the smile stepped forward. He was in his 40s, lean and hungry-looking, with a scar running from his left eye down to his jaw. His suit was expensive but rumpled, like he'd been wearing it for days. "Well, well," he said. "The king returns." Lucien didn't respond. The man tilted his head. 3 years, Lucien. 3 years of silence. We all thought you were a vegetable. Guess we were wrong." "What do you want, Marco?" Marco's smile widened. "What do I want? I want what you owe me. I want the territories you promised. I want the money you stole." He paused. "And I want you dead. In that order." "Get in line," Marco laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Still got jokes. That's good. You're going to need that sense of humor when I'm carving pieces off you." Zara's pulse hammered in her ears. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself smaller. Marco's eyes slid over to her. "Who's this?" he asked. "No one," Lucien said quickly. "No one." Marco stepped closer, studying Zara's face. "She's the nurse, isn't she? The one Kane hired to babysit you?" His grin turned predatory. "How much does she know?" "Nothing." "Liar." Marco raised his hand. The man with the handgun moved forward and pressed the silencer against Zara's temple. Cold metal. Hard pressure. Zara's breath stopped. "Last chance," Marco said. "Tell me what you've been doing for 3 years, or I paint the wall with her brains." Lucien's jaw tightened. "You touch her, I'll gut you myself." "You'll try." For 5 seconds, no one moved. Then Lucien stood up, slowly, deliberately, like a corpse dragging itself out of the grave. Marco's smile vanished. "What the—" Lucien crossed the room in 3 strides and drove his fist into Marco's throat. The sound was wet and brutal, cartilage collapsing, air cutting off. Marco dropped to his knees, clutching his neck, eyes wide with shock. The man with the shotgun swung the barrel toward Lucien, too slow. Lucien grabbed the gun, twisted it sideways, and slammed the stock into the man's face. Bone crunched, blood sprayed. The man went down hard. The third man still had his gun pressed against Zara's head. Lucien froze. "Move again, and she dies," the man said. Lucien's eyes locked onto Zara's. She'd never seen anyone look at her like that before. Not with pity or desire or indifference, but with something raw and desperate that made her chest ache. "Let her go," Lucien said quietly. "Drop the shotgun." Lucien let the weapon fall. Marco was still on the floor, gasping for air like a drowning man. The third man glanced down at him, then back at Lucien. "We're leaving," he said. "You follow us, she dies. You call the cops, she dies. You do anything except stay in this room, she dies. Understand?" Lucien nodded once. The man grabbed Zara's arm and yanked her toward the door. She stumbled, trying to pull free, but his grip was iron. "Wait!" "Shut up!" They dragged her down the hallway. Zara twisted, looking back over her shoulder. Lucien stood in the doorway, fists clenched, rage carved into every line of his face. Then they turned a corner, and he disappeared. They hauled her down the stairs and through the foyer. The mansion was dark except for emergency lights glowing red along the baseboards. Zara could hear shouting somewhere deeper in the house, Kane's voice, sharp and commanding. The front door hung open. Rain poured through the entrance, soaking the marble floor. The man shoved Zara outside into the downpour. A black SUV idled in the driveway, engine rumbling. He dragged her toward it. "Get in." "Where are you taking me?" He didn't answer, just opened the back door and threw her inside. Zara landed hard on the leather seat, her shoulders slamming into the opposite door. Before she could scramble out, the man climbed in beside her and slammed the door shut. The driver hit the gas. They peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching, and tore down the street. Zara pressed herself into the corner, heart pounding, watching the mansion disappear behind them. "Please," she said, "I don't know anything." The man beside her lit a cigarette. "Sure you don't." "I'm just his nurse." "Yeah, and I'm the Easter Bunny." Zara's hand shook. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere quiet." That was not reassuring. They drove for 20 minutes, leaving the city behind and heading into industrial wasteland. Abandoned factories, empty lots, chain-link fences topped with barbed wire. The kind of place where people disappeared and no one asked questions. The SUV pulled into a warehouse parking lot and stopped. The man grabbed Zara's arm and dragged her out into the rain. She tried to fight, but he was twice her size and moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. He shoved her through a rusted door and into darkness. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and cold. Water dripped from holes in the ceiling. The air smelled like oil and rot. A single light bulb hung from a wire in the center of the space. Beneath it sat a metal chair. "Sit," the man said. Zara didn't move. He pulled a knife from his belt. "I said sit." She sat. He zip-tied her wrists to the armrests and her ankles to the chair legs. The plastic bit into her skin. Zara's breath came fast and shallow. "What do you want from me?" The man crouched down in front of her, his face inches from hers. "I want you to tell me everything Lucian's been doing for the past 3 years." "I told you I don't—" He slapped her. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to snap her head sideways and fill her mouth with the taste of copper. "Try again." Zara's eyes watered. "I don't know anything. I swear." "You've been with him every day for 3 months. You telling me he never said anything? Never moved? Never gave you a sign?" Her mind raced. If she told the truth, that Lucien had only revealed himself last night, would they believe her? Or would they assume she knew more? "He's paralyzed," Zara said. "He doesn't talk. He doesn't move. He just sits there." "Bullshit. It's the truth." The man stood and walked a slow circle around her chair. "You know what I think? I think Lucien's been faking it. I think he's been hiding inside that mansion, playing dead, while he figured out how to screw us all over." "That doesn't make any sense, doesn't it?" He stopped behind her. 3 years ago, Lucien's wife and kid died. His empire fell apart. Everyone assumed he was finished, but what if he wasn't? What if he's been planning something this whole time? Planning what? That's what you're going to tell me. "I can't tell you something I don't know." His hand closed around the back of her neck, not squeezing, just holding. A threat. "Here's what's going to happen," he said quietly. "You're going to sit here and think real hard about what you've seen, and when you remember something useful, you're going to tell me. Because if you don't, I'm going to start cutting pieces off you until you do." Zara's stomach twisted. "Please, save it." He walked away, his footsteps echoing through the warehouse. A door opened and closed, then silence. Zara sat alone in the dark, tied to a chair, rain hammering on the roof above. She pulled against the zip ties. They didn't budge. Panic clawed at her chest. She forced herself to breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the way her mother had taught her when she was a kid having nightmares. "Think, Zara, think." Lucien had moved. That was real. He'd spoken. He'd fought. He wasn't paralyzed, which meant everything she thought she knew was a lie. But why fake it? What was he hiding from? And why the hell had he told her the truth now? The door opened again. Zara's head snapped up, but it wasn't the man with the knife. It was someone else. A woman. She was tall and elegant, maybe 50 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, and a face that looked like it had been carved from ice. She wore a black coat that probably cost more than Zara's car. The woman walked slowly toward the chair, her heels clicking on concrete. "Miss Okoye," she said. Her voice was cultured, British accent. I apologize for the crude accommodations. Zara's throat was too tight to respond. The woman stopped a few feet away, studying Zara like she was an insect under glass. My name is Vivian Harcourt. I've been looking for Lucien Vey for quite some time. Who are you? A concerned party. Vivian's smile was thin and cold. Tell me, how long have you been working for him? 3 months. And in those 3 months, did he ever give you any indication that he was capable of movement? No. You're certain? Yes. Vivian tilted her head. Interesting. Because my associate tells me that Lucien stood up tonight, walked, fought, almost killed 3 men. She paused. Does that sound like a paralyzed man to you? Zara said nothing. I'll take your silence as confirmation, Vivian continued, which means Lucien Vey has been lying to everyone, hiding, waiting. Her eyes glittered. The question is, waiting for what? I don't know. Don't you? Vivian stepped closer. You spend more time with him than anyone. You bathe him, dress him, feed him. Surely he said something. He doesn't talk. He talked tonight. Zara's pulse spiked. Vivian smiled. Yes, I have eyes everywhere, Miss Okoye. I know exactly what happened in that bedroom. Lucien revealed himself to you, which means you're important to him. She crouched down, bringing her face level with Zara's. And that makes you valuable to me. I don't know anything. Perhaps not. But Lucien will come for you. And when he does, I'll be waiting. Zara's chest tightened. He's not coming. Oh, I think he is. Vivian stood. You see, Miss Okoye, Lucien Vey destroyed everything I built. He stole from me, betrayed me, and then he had the audacity to fake his own death and disappear. Her voice hardened. I've been hunting him for 3 years, and now, thanks to you, I finally have bait. She turned and walked toward the door. Wait, Zara called out. What are you going to do to me? Vivian paused in the doorway. That depends entirely on Lucien. Then she was gone. Time became meaningless. Zara sat in the dark, cold and exhausted, her wrists raw from pulling against the zip ties. Her shoulder throbbed where she'd hit the car door. Her cheek burned where the man had slapped her. She tried to stay calm, tried to think, but all she could see was Lucien's face. The way he'd looked at her when the gun was pressed to her head, like losing her would destroy him. Why? She was nobody. Just a nurse. Just another woman the world looked through. Except Lucien had seen her. Really seen her. And now she was going to die because of it. The door opened again. This time it was the man with the knife. He walked over and cut the zip ties binding her ankles. Get up. Zara's legs were numb. She stumbled when she tried to stand. He caught her arm and steadied her. Where are we going? Somewhere else. He dragged her outside. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and humid. A different vehicle waited. A windowless van. He shoved her inside. Zara landed on a metal floor. Before she could move, he slammed the doors shut. Darkness swallowed her. The engine started. They drove. Zara lost track of time. Could have been 10 minutes, could have been an hour. The van turned corners, hit potholes, jolted over speed bumps. She braced herself against the walls, trying not to fall. Finally, they stopped. The doors opened. Daylight flooded in, blinding her. Rough hands grabbed her arms and hauled her out. She blinked, vision adjusting. They were in an alley behind a building. Brick walls, dumpsters, graffiti. The man dragged her toward a metal door and kicked it open. Inside was a stairwell. Concrete steps leading down into darkness. He shoved her forward. Zara stumbled, catching herself on the railing. Move! She descended slowly, each step echoing. At the bottom was another door. The man pushed it open. Beyond was a basement. No, not a basement. A cell. Concrete floor, concrete walls, a single drain in the center, a cot shoved against one wall. The man cut the zip ties on her wrists and pushed her inside. Make yourself comfortable. How long? He slammed the door. A lock clicked. Zara stood in the middle of the cell, shaking, listening to his footsteps retreat up the stairs. Then silence. She sank onto the cot and pulled her knees to her chest. This was real. This was actually happening. She was going to die in a concrete box because she'd fallen into the orbit of a man who'd been pretending to be broken for 3 years. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. But hours passed. Zara drifted in and out of something that wasn't quite sleep, more like exhaustion pulling her under and spitting her back out. Her body ached. Her throat was dry. She had no idea what time it was. Eventually, footsteps echoed in the stairwell. The door opened. Vivian Harcourt stood in the doorway, holding a bottle of water and a sandwich wrapped in plastic. "Eat," she said, setting them on the floor. Zara didn't move. "Starving yourself won't change anything." "Why are you doing this?" Vivian studied her. "Do you know what Lucien Vey did before his accident?" "I know he was in the Mafia. He wasn't just in the Mafia. He controlled half of Chicago's criminal operations. Drugs, guns, trafficking. He was untouchable." Her voice hardened. "And he did it by betraying everyone who trusted him, including me." "I don't understand." 10 years ago, Lucien and I were partners. We built an empire together. Then one day, he decided he wanted it all for himself. He framed me for a murder I didn't commit. I spent 3 years in prison because of him. Vivian's smile was bitter. When I got out, I learned he'd taken everything. My territory, my money, my reputation. So this is revenge. This is justice. Zara's hands curled into fists. I have nothing to do with that. You have everything to do with it, because Lucien cares about you. Vivian crouched down, bringing her face level with Zara's. I've been watching him for months. He's been trapped in that mansion, playing dead, waiting for the right moment to disappear completely. But then you showed up, and suddenly he started paying attention again. That's not true, isn't it? Vivian's eyes glittered. Why do you think he revealed himself to you last night? Why do you think he fought 3 men to protect you? Because you're special, Miss Okoye. You made him feel something, and that weakness is going to destroy him. Zara's chest tightened. So, here's what's going to happen, Vivian continued. I'm going to send Lucien a message. I'm going to tell him exactly where you are. And when he comes to save you, I'm going to kill him. He won't come. Yes, he will. Vivian stood. Because men like Lucien always come for the women they love, even when they know it's a trap. She walked out. The door slammed shut. Zara sat in the darkness, Vivian's words echoing in her head. The women they love. No, that was impossible. Lucien didn't love her. He barely knew her, except he'd watched her for 3 months, listened to her talk, let her sing to him, let her touch him when no one else would. And last night, when she'd asked why she wasn't enough, he'd moved, for the first time in 3 years. Zara pressed her hands over her face. This couldn't be real. None of this could be real. Time crawled. Zara forced herself to eat the sandwich, drink the water, stay functional. She examined every inch of the cell, looking for a way out. The walls were solid concrete. The door was steel with no handle on the inside. The drain in the floor was too small to fit through. She was trapped. Hours passed. Maybe a full day. She couldn't tell. Eventually she heard shouting upstairs, muffled voices, footsteps running, then gunfire. Sharp cracks echoing through the building. Zara scrambled to her feet and pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. More shots, closer now. Someone screamed. Then silence. Footsteps descended the stairs, slow, heavy. The lock clicked. The door opened. Lucien Vey stood in the doorway, blood splattered across his shirt, a gun in his hand. His eyes locked onto hers. Are you hurt? Zara's throat closed. She shook her head. Lucien stepped inside and grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. We have to move, now. What did you... Later. He dragged her up the stairs. Zara's legs were shaky, barely holding her weight. At the top, the hallway was carnage. Bodies slumped against walls, blood pooling on linoleum. She tried not to look. Lucien kicked open a door leading outside. Daylight blinded her. He shoved her toward a black sedan idling at the curb. Kane sat behind the wheel. Lucien opened the back door and pushed Zara inside, then climbed in after her. Drive. Kane hit the gas. They tore through the streets, weaving between cars, running red lights. Zara gripped the seat, trying to catch her breath. "What happened back there?" she managed. "I killed them," Lucien said flatly. "All of them?" "Yes." Zara stared at him. Blood was drying on his hands. His face was expressionless. He looked nothing like the silent man she'd been caring for. He looked like exactly what he was. A killer. "How did you find me?" she asked quietly. "I have people everywhere." Vivian said, "I know what she said." Lucien's jaw tightened. "She was using you as bait, and you walked right into it. What choice did I have?" Zara's chest ached. "You could have left me." Lucien turned to look at her. His eyes were dark and hard and full of something she couldn't name. "No, I couldn't." Kane glanced in the rearview mirror. "We have a problem." "What?" "Vivian's people are following us." Lucien swore under his breath. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "It's me. I need an extraction. Now." A pause. "I don't care. Make it happen." He hung up. "Where are we going?" Zara asked. "Somewhere safe." "Nowhere safe." "I know." Kane took a sharp turn. Tires screeched. Behind them, 2 SUVs appeared, closing the distance fast. Lucien rolled down his window and leaned out, gun raised. "What are you doing?" Zara yelled. He fired 3 shots. The lead SUV's windshield spiderwebbed. It swerved, clipped a parked car, and flipped. The second SUV kept coming. Lucien fired again. This time the tire blew. The vehicle spun out, slammed into a light pole, and stopped. He pulled himself back inside and rolled up the window. "Keep driving." Kane didn't slow down. They reached the industrial district and pulled into an abandoned factory lot. A helicopter sat on a concrete pad, rotors spinning. "Out," Lucien said. Zara stumbled out of the car. Lucien grabbed her hand and ran toward the helicopter. Wind from the rotors whipped her hair into her face. He lifted her inside, then climbed in after her. The pilot didn't wait. They lifted off immediately. Zara looked down as the ground fell away. Kane stood beside the car, watching them disappear. "Where are we going?" she shouted over the noise. Lucien didn't answer. "That's it." They flew for an hour. Eventually, the helicopter descended toward a small airstrip in the middle of nowhere. A private jet waited on the tarmac. Lucien helped Zara down and guided her toward the plane. Her legs felt like jelly. Everything felt unreal, like she'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. Inside the jet, leather seats and polished wood. A far cry from the concrete cell. Lucien gestured to a seat. "Sit." Zara sat. He disappeared into the back. Zara heard water running. A minute later, he returned wearing a clean shirt, the blood washed from his hands. He sat across from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Zara said, "You killed people for me." "Yes." "Why?" Lucien's expression didn't change. "Because they took you." "That's not a reason." "It's the only reason I need." Zara's hand shook. "I don't understand any of this. I don't understand you." "I know." 3 years, she said. 3 years you let me think you were helpless. You let me bathe you, dress you, feed you like a child. Her voice cracked. "Why?" Lucien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because I was hiding. From everyone. From the people who wanted me dead. From the guilt of what I'd done." He paused. "And then you showed up. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't want to hide anymore." Tears slipped down Zara's cheeks. "This is insane." "I know. I'm nobody. I'm just—" "You're not nobody." Lucien's voice was quiet but firm. "You're the only person who looked at me and saw someone worth saving." Zara wiped her eyes roughly. "I don't even know who you really are." "Yes, you do. You've known me longer than anyone." He held her gaze. "The man in that wheelchair, the one you talk to every morning, that was me. The real me. Everything else is just survival." The jet engines roared to life. Zara looked out the window as they began to taxi. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere Vivian can't find us." "And then what?" Lucien didn't answer, because there was no good answer. They were running. And eventually, people like Vivian always caught up. They flew through the night. Zara dozed fitfully, her head resting against the window. Every time she started to drift off, She'd jerk awake, heart pounding, convinced she was still in that concrete cell. Lucien didn't sleep. He sat across from her, staring at nothing, his jaw tight. Finally, Zara said, "Tell me about your wife." Lucien's eyes flicked to hers. "Why?" "Because I need to understand what I'm caught in the middle of." For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he said, "Her name was Celeste. We were married for 2 years. She was pregnant when—" His voice caught. "When they came for me." Zara's chest tightened. "What happened?" "I had a meeting that night. Business. I left her at home alone." Lucien's hands curled into fists. "They broke in while I was gone. Set the house on fire. By the time I got back, it was too late." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was my fault." "You didn't set the fire." "No. But I built the empire that made her a target." His expression hardened. "I destroyed everyone who did it. Burned their operations to the ground, killed them one by one. But it didn't bring her back." Zara didn't know what to say. "After that," Lucien continued quietly, "I didn't care if I lived or died. So when the next attack came, the one that put me in the hospital, I decided to disappear, pretend I was broken, wait for everyone to forget about me." "And then?" "And then you showed up, and suddenly dying didn't seem like the only option anymore." Zara's throat tightened. The plane began its descent. Lucien stood and looked out the window. "We're landing." "Where are we?" "Nowhere important." They touched down on a small runway surrounded by nothing but fields and darkness. A car waited at the edge of the tarmac, an old sedan that had seen better days. Lucien helped Zara down the steps. The night air was cool and smelled like earth and rain. They got into the car. Lucien drove. "Where are we going?" Zara asked again. "A safe house. One of Kane's. No one knows about it except us." They drove for 30 minutes through winding back roads. Finally, they pulled up to a small cabin hidden among trees. No lights, no neighbors, just isolation. Lucien killed the engine. "Stay here," he said. He got out and circled the cabin, checking windows and doors. When he was satisfied, he came back and opened Zara's door. "It's clear." Inside, the cabin was sparse. A single room with a bed, a table, a kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was warm, and it was safe. For now. Lucien locked the door and pulled the curtains shut. Zara sank onto the bed, exhaustion crashing over her. "How long do we stay here?" "Until I figure out our next move." "And if Vivian finds us?" "She won't." "You don't know that." Lucien sat down beside her. "No, I don't." For a long time they sat in silence. Then Zara said, "You shouldn't have come for me." "I know." "You should have let me die." "No." "Why not?" Lucien turned to look at her. His eyes were tired, haunted, human. "Because losing you would have killed me anyway." The words hung between them. Zara's breath caught. "Lucien." "I know this doesn't make sense," he said quietly. "I know you barely know me. But for 3 years, you were the only light in my world. The only thing that made me want to keep breathing." He paused, "and I'm not going to apologize for that." Tears blurred Zara's vision. "This is crazy." "I know. We're going to die." "Probably." She laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. "You're insane." "Yeah." Lucien's mouth curved into something that almost resembled a smile. "But so are you. You came back to that mansion even after you knew the truth." Zara wiped her eyes. "Because I'm an idiot." "No, because you care." She looked at him, really looked at him. Not the paralyzed man she'd been caring for, not the mafia kingpin who'd killed people to save her, just a man, broken, dangerous, desperate. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "Neither do I." "This is the stupidest thing I've ever done." "Probably." Zara leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't romantic, it was raw and terrified and full of the certainty that they were both going to die, and maybe that was okay if they at least had this one moment. Lucien's hand came up to cup her face. His thumb brushed against her cheekbone. When they finally pulled apart, They were both shaking. We can't stay here, Zara said. I know. Vivian's going to find us. I know. So what do we do? Lucien's jaw tightened. We stop running. What does that mean? He stood and walked to the table. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out a folded piece of paper and spread it out. It was a list. Names, addresses, bank account numbers. What is this? Zara asked. Everything Vivian's been looking for. Lucien's voice was cold. For 3 years, I've been gathering evidence, financial records, witness testimonies, proof of every crime she's committed. He looked at Zara. Enough to bury her for life. Why didn't you use it before? Because I was hiding, waiting for the right moment. His expression hardened. But she made a mistake when she took you. Now I know exactly how to destroy her. Zara's pulse spiked. How? Lucien smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. By giving her exactly what she wants. Zara stared at the list of names spread across the table, her pulse hammering in her temples. You want to use yourself as bait, she said. Yes. That's suicide. Lucien's expression didn't change. It's the only way to end this. No. Zara stood, her hands shaking. There has to be another option. We can go to the police, the FBI, someone. And tell them what? That a mafia kingpin faked his paralysis for 3 years and now his former partner is trying to kill him? Lucien's voice was flat. They'd arrest me before I finished the sentence. Then we keep running. For how long? A year? 5? The rest of our lives? He stepped closer. Vivian won't stop. She'll hunt us until one of us is dead. Zara's chest tightened. So you're just going to walk into her trap? No, I'm going to turn it around. Lucien tapped the paper. I'm going to give her what she thinks she wants. Me, defenseless, ready to die. And when she takes the bait, I'm going to destroy everything she's built. How? By making sure this evidence reaches the right people. Federal prosecutors, journalists, everyone who's been trying to bring her down for years. His jaw hardened. If I die, she goes down with me. Zara felt sick. You're talking about a suicide mission. I'm talking about justice. Justice? Her voice cracked. You think dying solves anything? It solves this. Lucien's eyes locked onto hers. Keeps you alive. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. I didn't ask you to die for me, she whispered. I know. Then don't. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. Zara grabbed his arm. You can choose to live, to fight, to find another way. Lucien pulled free gently. There is no other way. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He walked to the window and stared out into the darkness. Rain had started again, tapping against the glass like fingers trying to get in. 3 years ago, he said quietly, I thought losing Celeste would kill me. I wanted it to, but it didn't. I just kept breathing, kept existing. He paused. And then you showed up, and for the first time I wanted to live again. Zara's throat burned. But wanting something doesn't make it possible, Lucien continued. I built an empire on blood. I destroyed lives. I can't undo that. And I can't let you pay for my mistakes. So you're just going to throw yourself away? I'm going to make sure you survive. I don't want to survive without you. The words came out before Zara could stop them. Lucien turned slowly, his expression unreadable. You don't mean that, he said. Yes, I do. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I know this is insane. I know we barely know each other, but I can't watch you die. For a long moment, Lucien didn't move. Then he crossed the room and cupped her face in his hands. If I don't do this, we both die. You understand that? Then we fight together. No. Lucien, no. His voice was firm. I've already lost one person I loved. I'm not losing another. The word hung between them. Loved. Zara's breath caught. Lucien's thumb brushed against her cheek. I know I don't deserve you. I know this is wrong, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Zara closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to run, to save herself. But when she opened her eyes again, all she saw was a man who'd spent 3 years pretending to be dead, so he could finally be alive. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. Lucian kissed her forehead. Thank you. Then he stepped back and picked up his phone. What are you doing? Zara asked. Calling Vivian. Her stomach dropped. Now? The longer we wait, the more time she has to find us. He dialed. It ends tonight. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. Lucienne. Vivian's voice poured through the speaker like poison. I was wondering when you'd call. We need to talk, Lucian said. Do we? I thought you made your position clear when you murdered my associates. They took something that belonged to me. Ah, yes, your little nurse. How sweet. Vivian's tone turned mocking. Tell me, Lucienne, is she worth dying for? That depends on what you want. A pause. Then Vivian laughed, cold and sharp. What I want is everything you took from me, my empire, my reputation, my life. I can give you one of those things. Which one? My life. Silence on the other end. You have my attention, Vivian said finally. I'll meet you, alone. No guards, no weapons. Just you and me. Lucian's voice was steady. In exchange, you leave Zara alone. Forever. And why would I agree to that? Because killing me is what you've wanted for 10 years. This is your chance. Another pause. Where? Vivian asked. The old steel mill on the south side. Midnight. How do I know you'll come alone? You don't. But if you want me dead, this is the only offer you're getting. Vivienne was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, If you're lying, I'll gut her in front of you before I kill you. Understood? Understood. Midnight. Don't be late. She hung up. Lucian set the phone down and exhaled slowly. Zara stared at him. You're really doing this? Yes. What if she kills you the second you walk in? She won't. She'll want to savor it. Lucien checked his watch. We have 6 hours. To do what? To make sure this evidence reaches the right people. He folded the paper and slipped it into an envelope. Kane has contacts in the FBI. If I don't call him by 1 a.m., he'll deliver this to federal prosecutors. And if you do call, then I'm alive. And we figure out the next step. Zara's hands curled into fists. I hate this plan. I know. It's going to get you killed. Maybe. And you're okay with that? Lucien looked at her. Really looked at her. If it means you survive? Yes. Zara wanted to scream, to hit something, to drag him out of this cabin and force him to run. But she knew it wouldn't matter. Men like Lucien didn't run. They burned everything down and stood in the ashes. Both. They didn't speak much after that. Lucien made coffee. Zara sat at the table staring at nothing, trying to process what was about to happen. At 11 p.m., Lucien stood. We should go. I'm coming with you. No. You can't stop me. Zara, if you're walking into a trap, I'm not staying here wondering if you're dead. Her voice shook. I'm coming. End of discussion. Lucien's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Then he nodded once. Stay in the car. If anything goes wrong, you drive away and don't look back. Fine. They got into the sedan. Lucien drove in silence, headlights cutting through the darkness. Zara watched the road blur past, her stomach churning. The steel mill rose out of the industrial wasteland like a skeleton. Rusted beams, shattered windows, a monument to something that used to matter. Lucien parked a block away and killed the engine. Wait here, he said. Lucien, please. Zara bit her lip. Be careful. He leaned over and kissed her. It was brief, desperate. The kind of kiss that felt like goodbye. Then he got out and walked toward the mill. Zara watched him disappear into the darkness. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10, 15. Zara couldn't take it anymore. She got out of the car and followed. The mill loomed ahead, all twisted metal and broken concrete. She slipped through a gap in the fence and crept toward the main building. Voices echoed inside, muffled but distinct. Zara pressed herself against the wall and peered through a shattered window. Lucien stood in the center of the space, hands at his sides. Vivian faced him, flanked by 4 armed men. She wore the same black coat, her silver hair pulled back, her expression carved from ice. "You came," Vivian said. "I gave my word." How noble. She circled him slowly. "Tell me, Lucien, do you regret it? Everything you did to me?" "Yes." Vivian stopped. "Liar." "I'm not lying. I regret a lot of things. What I did to you, what I did to Celeste." Lucien's voice was quiet. "But I can't undo any of it." "No, you can't." Vivian stepped closer. "But you can pay for it." She nodded to one of her men. He raised his gun. Lucien didn't flinch. The gun fired. Zara's scream caught in her throat, but Lucien didn't fall. The shot had gone wide, deliberately. Vivian laughed. "Not yet. I want him to suffer first." She pulled a knife from her coat. Zara's heart hammered. She had to do something, anything, but before she could move, a voice echoed through the mill. "That's enough!" Everyone turned. Laurent Kane stepped out of the shadows, flanked by a dozen armed men. Vivian's expression darkened. "What is this?" "Insurance," Kane said calmly. He looked at Lucien. "Did you really think I'd let you walk in here alone?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "I told you not to follow me. And I told you I don't take orders from suicidal idiots." Kane's gaze shifted to Vivian. "Lower your weapons." Vivian's men hesitated. "Do it," she snapped. They lowered their guns. Kane gestured to his own men. "Take her." 2 of them moved forward. Vivian didn't resist. She just smiled, cold and knowing. "You think this changes anything?" "It's over," Lucien said. "Is it?" Vivian's eyes glittered. "Did you really believe I came here unprepared?" She pulled a remote from her pocket and pressed a button. Somewhere in the building, something beeped. Kane's expression shifted. "Everyone out! Now!" Chaos erupted. People scattered, shouting, running. Lucien sprinted toward the exit. Zara stumbled backward, her heart in her throat. The explosion tore through the mill like the hand of something ancient and furious. Fire bloomed. Metal shrieked. The building collapsed inward. Zara hit the ground hard, ears ringing, dust choking her lungs. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Hands grabbed her arms. Lucien's voice, raw and desperate. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, coughing. He pulled her to her feet and dragged her away from the wreckage. Behind them, flames consumed what was left of the mill. "Where's Kane?" Zara gasped. Lucien didn't answer. They ran until they reached the car. Lucien shoved her inside and climbed into the driver's seat. He started the engine and floored it. Zara looked back through the rear window. The mill was an inferno. Black smoke poured into the sky. "Lucien?" "He's gone," Lucien said flatly. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." His hands gripped the wheel. Kane was standing right where the blast went off. Zara's chest tightened. "Oh my God. He knew. He knew this would happen." Lucien's voice cracked. "He followed me because he knew I'd die otherwise, and now he's dead instead." Tears burned Zara's eyes. "This isn't your fault." "Yes, it is." Lucien's jaw clenched. "Everyone who gets close to me dies." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Celeste? My daughter, Kane." He looked at her. "You're next." "No. Yes." His voice was hoarse. "As long as you're with me, you're in danger. Vivian won't stop. She'll keep coming, and eventually, she'll kill you." "Then we kill her first." "How? We don't even know if she survived the explosion." Zara's phone buzzed. She pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from an unknown number. "Nice try. See you soon." Beneath it, a photo. Vivian Harcourt, standing outside the mill, covered in dust but very much alive. Zara showed Lucien the screen. His expression went cold. "She played us." "What do you mean?" "The explosion was never meant to kill me. It was meant to kill Kane." Lucien's hands tightened on the wheel. She knew he'd follow. She knew I'd bring backup. So she rigged the building and let us walk right into it. Why? Because Kane was the only person standing between her and everything she wants. Lucien's voice dropped. Without him, I have no resources, no contacts, no way to fight back. Zara's stomach turned. So what do we do now? I don't know. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucien Vey looked lost. Sam. They drove until they ran out of road. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields and darkness, Lucien pulled over and killed the engine. He sat there, staring straight ahead, breathing hard. Zara reached over and took his hand. We'll figure this out. No, we won't. His voice was hollow. Vivian has everything. Money, power, connections. I have nothing. You have me. That's not enough. The words hit her like a slap. Lucien turned to look at her. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I know what you meant. Zara pulled her hand back. You meant I'm useless, that I can't help, that I'm just dead weight. That's not... It is. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You think I don't know? I've been useless my entire life, too fat, too black, too poor, never enough for anyone. Zara, and now I'm not even enough to keep you alive. She laughed bitterly. So why am I even here? Lucien grabbed her face and forced her to look at him. Because I love you. The world stopped. What? Zara whispered. I love you, Lucien said again. And that terrifies me because everyone I've ever loved has died, and I can't... His voice broke. I can't watch you die. Zara's chest ached. But you're not useless, Lucien continued. You're the reason I'm still alive, the reason I want to keep fighting, the only good thing in my life. Tears streamed down her face. Then stop pushing me away. I don't know how. Try. Lucien pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed. 3 months of exhaustion and fear and loneliness pouring out all at once. He held her until she couldn't cry anymore. Finally, Zara pulled back and wiped her eyes. Okay, what's the plan? There is no plan. Then we make one. She straightened. What does Vivian want? Everything I took from her. Which is what exactly? Lucien hesitated. Then he said, There's a safe deposit box in a bank downtown. Inside is $2 million in cash and a ledger documenting every transaction I made when I was running the empire. Why does she want the ledger? Because it proves she was innocent, that I framed her. His jaw tightened. If she gets it, she can clear her name and rebuild everything I destroyed. Zara's mind raced. So we destroy it first. I can't get to it. The bank knows my face. The second I walk in, they'll call the police. But they don't know mine. Lucien stared at her. No. Why not? Because it's too dangerous. Everything's dangerous. Zara met his gaze. You said it yourself. We're out of options. So either we do something crazy or we die. This isn't just crazy. It's suicide. Then I guess we're perfect for each other. Lucien opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Fine, he said finally, but we do this my way. You go in alone. Get the box. Get out. No risks. And what are you going to do? Make sure Vivian doesn't follow you. How? Lucien's expression hardened. By giving her exactly what she wants. Which is? Me. Zara's blood ran cold. No, absolutely not. It's the only way. You said that before and Cain died. I know. Lucien's voice was quiet. And this time, I'm not bringing anyone else. Except me. You'll be gone before she arrives. And if something goes wrong, it won't. You don't know that. No. He looked at her. But I know I'd rather die than watch her hurt you. Zara wanted to argue, to scream, to drag him away from this insane plan, but she knew it wouldn't matter. This was who Lucien Vey was. A man willing to burn himself to ash if it meant keeping her safe. Okay, she whispered. We do it your way. Lucien leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Zara pulled back. Because if you die, I'm going to find a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself. Lucien almost smiled. Deal. They drove back to the city as dawn broke over the horizon. The bank opened at 9 a.m. Lucien parked a block away and handed Zara a key. Box 317, he said. 3rd floor. Show them the key and your ID. They'll take you to the vault. And if they ask questions, tell them you're my wife." Zara's stomach flipped. "Will they believe that?" "They won't care as long as you have the key." She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. Lucian grabbed her hand. "In and out, 10 minutes. Then you come straight back here." "What are you going to do?" "Call Vivian. Tell her I have the ledger. Arrange a meeting." "Where?" "Somewhere public. Somewhere she can't blow up without drawing attention." Zara squeezed his hand. "Be careful." "You too." She got out of the car and walked toward the bank. Her legs felt like jelly. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Inside, the bank was all marble and glass. Cold. Sterile. A security guard nodded at her as she entered. Zara approached the desk. A young woman in a crisp suit looked up. "Can I help you?" "I need to access a safe deposit box." Zara held up the key. "Box 317. The woman typed something into her computer. "Name? Zara Vey." The lie came out smoother than she expected. The woman's expression didn't change. "ID, please." Zara handed over her driver's license. The woman examined it, then nodded. "Follow me." They took an elevator to the 3rd floor. The vault was behind a thick steel door. The woman unlocked it and gestured Zara inside. Rows of metal boxes lined the walls. 317 is on the right, the woman said. "Take your time." She left. Zara found the box and inserted the key. It clicked open. Inside was a leather-bound ledger and 2 stacks of cash wrapped in plastic. She grabbed both and shoved them into her bag. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped everything. She closed the box and hurried back to the elevator. The woman at the desk smiled as Zara passed. "Have a nice day?" "You too." Zara stepped outside into the morning sun. Her pulse roared in her ears. She'd done it. She turned toward the car and froze. Vivian Harcourt stood on the sidewalk, blocking her path. "Hello, Zara," she said. Behind her, 2 men stepped out of a black SUV. Zara's breath stopped. "Looking for this?" Vivian held up her phone. On the screen was a photo of Lucien, bound to a chair, blood streaming down his face. The world tilted. "He walked right into my trap," Vivian said. "Called me. Told me where to find him. Made it so easy." She smiled. "And now you're going to give me what's in that bag, or I'm going to send you pieces of him until there's nothing left." Zara's hands tightened on her bag. She thought about running, but there was nowhere to go. "Okay," she whispered. "You win." She held out the bag. Vivian took it, opened it, and pulled out the ledger. Her expression shifted, something like triumph mixed with relief. "Finally," she breathed. Then she looked at Zara. "Thank you for your cooperation." She nodded to one of her men. He raised his gun. Zara didn't have time to scream. The shot cracked through the air. The bullet never came. Instead, the man with the gun dropped. Hard and sudden, a hole punched clean through his skull. The second man reached for his weapon. Another shot. He went down. Zara's legs gave out. She hit the sidewalk, gasping, ears ringing from the gunfire. Vivian spun toward the source of the shots, her face twisted with rage. A figure stepped out from behind a parked van across the street. Laurent Kane, alive, covered in ash and blood, limping, but very much alive. "Impossible," Vivian breathed. Kane raised his gun. "You should have made sure I was dead." He fired. The bullet caught Vivian in the shoulder. She staggered backward, clutching the wound, the ledger slipping from her grip. Zara scrambled forward and grabbed it. Kane moved toward them, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Get to the car. Now!" "But Lucien, I know where he is. Move." Zara didn't argue. She ran. Behind her, Kane fired again. Vivian dove behind the SUV. More shots echoed through the street. People screamed. Car alarms wailed. Zara reached the sedan and threw herself inside. Her hand shook so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel. Kane appeared seconds later, yanking the passenger door open and dropping into the seat. Blood soaked through his shirt. His face was gray with pain. "Drive," he rasped. Zara started the engine and floored it. They tore through the streets, weaving between traffic, running lights. Zara's pulse hammered in her throat. She could barely see through the tears blurring her vision. "Where is he?" she choked out. "Warehouse district. South side." Kane pressed his hand against his ribs, wincing. She's been using it as a holding facility. How did you survive the explosion? Luck and body armor. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. I got thrown clear before the building collapsed. Took me 3 hours to dig myself out. You're bleeding. I know. You need a hospital. After we get Lucien. Zara's hands tightened on the wheel. Is he alive? Kane didn't answer immediately. Is he alive? She asked again, her voice breaking. I don't know, Kane said quietly. But if we don't get there soon, he won't be, but... The warehouse rose out of the industrial wasteland like a tomb. Rusted metal siding, shattered windows surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Kane directed Zara to park 2 blocks away. They got out and approached on foot. The sun had climbed higher, casting harsh shadows across cracked pavement. How many men does she have inside? Zara whispered. At least 6, maybe more. Kane pulled a second gun from his ankle holster and handed it to her. You know how to use this? Zara stared at the weapon. No. Point and squeeze. Don't think. Don't hesitate. Just shoot. His eyes locked onto hers. If someone tries to hurt you, you kill them. Understand? She nodded, throat tight. They moved along the fence until they found a gap where someone had cut through the wire. Kane squeezed through first, then helped Zara. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The warehouse door hung open. Inside was darkness and the smell of oil and rust. Kane raised his gun and stepped inside. Zara followed, gripping the weapon Kane had given her. Her palms were slick with sweat. They moved through the shadows, footsteps silent on concrete. Voices echoed somewhere deeper in the building, low and muffled. Kane held up a fist. Stop. He pointed to a doorway ahead. Light spilled through the crack. They crept forward. Through the gap, Zara saw them. Lucien sat in a metal chair in the center of an empty room, hands bound behind his back, blood crusted on his face. His left eye was swollen shut. His shirt was torn. Bruises covered his ribs. But he was alive. 3 men stood around him. One held a crowbar. Another smoked a cigarette. The third just watched, arms crossed. Where's the ledger? The one with the crowbar asked. Lucien spat blood. Go to hell. The crowbar came down on his shoulder. The sound, bone-meeting metal, made Zara's stomach turn. Lucien grunted but didn't scream. Wrong answer, the man said. He raised the crowbar again. Kane moved. He kicked the door open and fired twice. The man with the crowbar dropped. The one with the cigarette reached for his gun, but Kane shot him through the chest before he could draw. The third man dove behind a stack of crates. Zara rushed to Lucien. Are you okay? I've been better. His voice was hoarse. What are you doing here? Saving your stupid ass. You should have run. Shut up. She pulled a knife from Kane's belt and cut through the ropes binding Lucien's wrists. He groaned as his arms came free, shoulders screaming from hours in the same position. A gunshot cracked through the air. Kane staggered. Blood bloomed across his side. The third man stepped out from behind the crates, gun raised. Zara didn't think. She raised her weapon and fired. The recoil nearly knocked the gun from her hands. The shot went wide, hitting the wall behind the man. He turned his gun toward her. Lucien lunged forward and drove his fist into the man's throat. The man choked, stumbling backward. Lucien grabbed the gun from his hand and shot him twice. The man collapsed. Silence. Kane slumped against the wall, breathing hard. We need to move. Vivian's people will have heard that. Lucien grabbed Zara's arm. Are you hurt? No. Are you? Nothing permanent. He helped Kane stand. They moved toward the door, Lucien supporting most of Kane's weight. They made it to the hallway when footsteps echoed from the opposite direction. Back, Lucien hissed. They ducked into an adjacent room, some kind of storage space filled with rusted machinery. Lucien lowered Kane to the floor and pressed his hand over the wound in his side. How bad? Lucien asked quietly. Bad enough. Kane's face was pale. I'm not making it out of here. Yes, you are. Lucien, I already lost you once. I'm not doing it again. Kane's expression softened. You've always been stubborn. Yeah, I learned from you. Footsteps approached the door. Lucien raised his gun. The door burst open. 4 men rushed in. Lucien fired. One dropped. He fired again. Another fell. The third man tackled him. They hit the ground hard. The gun skittered across the floor. Zara scrambled for it, fingers closing around cold metal. The fourth man grabbed her from behind, arm wrapping around her throat. She couldn't breathe. Spots danced in her vision. She drove her elbow backward into his ribs. He grunted, but didn't let go. "Drop it," he growled in her ear. Zara's hand tightened on the gun. She twisted, shoved the barrel against his stomach, and pulled the trigger. The sound was muffled, wet. The man's grip loosened. He slid to the floor. Zara stumbled backward, gasping, staring at the body. She'd killed him, actually killed him. Her hands shook. The gun fell from her fingers. Across the room, Lucien drove his knee into his attacker's face. Bone crunched. The man went limp. Lucien rolled off him and grabbed the crowbar one of the dead men had dropped. He turned toward Zara. "You okay?" She nodded, unable to speak. "We have to go." Lucien helped Kane to his feet again. "Can you walk?" "Do I have a choice?" They moved back into the hallway. More shouts echoed through the building, running footsteps. "They're coming from both sides," Kane said. "Then we go up." Lucien pointed to a stairwell. "Roof." They climbed. Each step felt like knives in Zara's lungs. Kane was flagging, his breathing shallow and ragged. They burst through a door onto the roof. Sunlight blinded them. The city sprawled beyond, saw buildings and highways and the distant shimmer of the lake. Behind them, the door crashed open. Vivienne Harcourt stepped onto the roof, flanked by two men. Her shoulder was bandaged, but her eyes burned with fury. "Nowhere left to run," she said. Lucien pushed Zara behind him. "This is between us. Let her go." "No." Vivienne's smile was cold. "She's part of this now. You made her part of this when you dragged her into your world. She has nothing to do with what happened between us. Doesn't she?" Vivienne stepped closer. "You love her. I can see it. The way you look at her. The way you're willing to die for her." She laughed. "It's pathetic. You destroyed me for power, and now you're throwing it all away for some nurse you've known for 3 months. "I was wrong," Lucien said quietly. "What I did to you, framing you, taking everything, it was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I'm asking you to let her walk away." "Why should I?" "Because this doesn't have to end with more death." Vivienne tilted her head. "Doesn't it? You took everything from me, Lucien. My empire, my freedom, 3 years of my life rotting in a cell." Her voice dropped. "And you think I'm going to let you walk away with her while I have nothing? I can give you the ledger." "I already have the ledger." Lucien's jaw tightened. "Then what do you want?" "I want you to watch her die." Vivienne pulled a gun from her coat. "The way I watched everything I built burn." She raised the weapon. Lucien moved without thinking. He threw himself in front of Zara. The gun fired. The bullet hit Lucien in the chest. He staggered backward, eyes wide with shock. Zara screamed. Lucien dropped to his knees. Blood spread across his shirt, dark and fast. "No!" Zara caught him as he fell. "No! No! No!" Lucien's hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek. "Run," he whispered. "I'm not leaving you." "Zara, I'm not leaving you." Vivienne laughed. "How touching." She raised the gun again, aiming at Zara's head. Kane fired first. The bullet caught Vivienne in the chest. She stumbled, surprise flashing across her face. She looked down at the spreading red stain, then back at Kane. "You were always loyal to him," she said. Kane's expression was cold. "Always." Vivienne's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the rooftop, blood pooling beneath her. Her men raised their weapons. Kane shot one. The other fired back. The bullet hit Kane in the neck. He dropped. Zara's scream tore from her throat. The last man turned his gun toward her. A shot rang out. The man fell. Zara looked up. A helicopter hovered above the building. The side door was open. Inside, a figure in tactical gear held a rifle. A rope ladder dropped. The figure gestured urgently. "Move!" Zara looked at Lucien. Blood soaked through her hands where she pressed them against his chest. His breathing was shallow, labored. "I can't carry you," she sobbed. "Leave me." His voice was barely audible. "No. Zara, I said no." She hooked her arms under his and dragged him toward the ladder. He was so heavy. Too heavy. Her muscles screamed, her vision blurred with tears. She got him to the edge. The figure in the helicopter reached down, grabbing Lucien's arms. Together, they hauled him up. Zara climbed after them, hands slipping on the rungs. Below, more men poured onto the roof. Gunfire cracked through the air. The helicopter lurched upward. Zara pulled herself inside and collapsed onto the floor. The figure slammed the door shut. "Go!" they shouted at the pilot. The helicopter banked hard, pulling away from the warehouse. Zara crawled to Lucien. His eyes were closed. His chest barely moved. "Stay with me," she begged. "Please, stay with me." The figure pulled off their helmet. It was a woman, mid-30s, dark hair, sharp eyes. "Who are you?" Zara gasped. "Elena Torres, FBI." She pulled a medical kit from under the seat and ripped open Lucien's shirt. "He's lucky. Bullet missed the heart, but he's losing blood fast." She worked quickly, packing the wound, applying pressure. Zara held Lucien's hand. His skin was cold. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered. "Don't you dare." Lucien's eyes fluttered open, just for a second. "Love you," he breathed. Then his eyes closed again. "No!" Zara grabbed his face. "Lucien!" Elena pressed harder on the wound. "He's going into shock. We need to get him to a hospital. Now." The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. 5 minutes. "He doesn't have 5 minutes!" Zara screamed. "Then we pray," Elena said quietly. The helicopter tore through the sky. Below, the city blurred past. Zara held Lucien's hand and prayed to every power she didn't believe in. Please, please let him live. The hospital was chaos. Paramedics met them on the roof. They pulled Lucien from the helicopter and rushed him inside on a gurney. Zara tried to follow, but a nurse stopped her. "Family only." "I'm his wife," Zara lied. The nurse looked at her, covered in blood, shaking, wild-eyed. "Wait here," she said finally. They disappeared through double doors. Zara sank into a chair in the waiting room. Her hands were still covered in Lucien's blood. She couldn't stop shaking. Elena sat down beside her. "He's strong. He'll make it." "You don't know that." "No, but I know he survived 3 years in hell. He can survive this." Zara wiped her eyes roughly. "Who are you? Why did you help us?" "I've been tracking Vivian Harcourt for 5 years. She's responsible for more deaths than I can count." Elena leaned back. "When we got intel that Lucien Vey was alive and had evidence against her, I moved fast. How did you know where to find us?" "Kane called me before the explosion, told me everything, said if anything happened to him, I needed to get you and Lucien out." Her expression softened. "He was a good man." Zara's throat tightened. "He died saving us. He died doing what he believed in." Elena stood. "The ledger you recovered, it's enough to destroy Vivian's entire network. Because of you and Lucien, we can finally bring them down." "I don't care about that. I just want him to live." Elena nodded. "I know." She walked away. Zara sat alone in the waiting room, staring at the blood on her hands. Hours passed. A doctor finally emerged, pulling off his surgical mask. "Miss Okoye?" Zara shot to her feet. "Is he alive?" "He's stable. We removed the bullet and repaired the damage to his lung. He lost a lot of blood, but he's a fighter." The doctor's expression was cautious. "The next 24 hours are critical, but if he makes it through tonight, his chances are good." Zara's legs nearly gave out. "Can I see him?" "He's in recovery, unconscious, but you can sit with him." She followed the doctor through sterile hallways to a room at the end of the corridor. Lucien lay in the bed, pale and still, tubes running from his arms. Machines beeped softly. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Zara pulled a chair close and took his hand. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Chiband. Night fell. Zara didn't sleep. She sat beside Lucien's bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor. At some point, a nurse brought her coffee and a sandwich. She couldn't eat. Around midnight, Lucien stirred. His eyes fluttered open, just barely. "Zara?" His voice was a rasp. "I'm here." She squeezed his hand. "You're going to be okay." "Kane?" Her throat closed. He didn't make it. Pain flickered across Lucien's face. He saved us. I know. Vivian? Dead. Lucien's eyes closed. It's over. Yeah, it's over. He squeezed her hand weakly. Told you. I'd keep you safe. You idiot. You almost died. Worth it. Tears slipped down Zara's cheeks. Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that. Try. Lucien's mouth curved into something that almost resembled a smile. Then sleep pulled him under again. Zara sat there in the darkness, holding his hand, and finally let herself believe they might actually survive this. Three days later, Elena Torres returned. Lucien was awake now, sitting up in bed, color returning to his face. The doctors said he'd make a full recovery. Elena pulled up a chair. We raided Vivian's network, arrested 43 people, seized over 200 million in assets. She looked at Lucien. You destroyed an empire. It was never mine to destroy, Lucien said quietly. The U.S. attorney wants to talk to you. You'll need to testify. And then? And then we'll see. Elena's expression was unreadable. You've committed crimes, a lot of them, but you also helped us take down one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. That counts for something. What are you saying? I'm saying there might be a deal on the table. Immunity in exchange for cooperation. She paused. But you'd have to disappear. New identity, new life. Leave everything behind. Lucien looked at Zara. She met his gaze. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. You'd give up everything? He asked quietly. I don't have much to give up. She squeezed his hand. You're all I need. Lucien turned back to Elena. What about Kane? Will his family be taken care of? Already done. Full pension, benefits. They'll want for nothing. Lucien nodded slowly. Then we have a deal. Elena stood. I'll be in touch. She left. Zara climbed onto the bed beside Lucien, careful of his injuries. He wrapped his arm around her. You sure about this? He asked. About what? Disappearing with me, starting over, never looking back. Zara rested her head on his shoulder. I've been invisible my whole life. Maybe it's time I disappeared for real. Lucien pressed a kiss to her forehead. Where do you want to go? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one knows our names. That sounds perfect. They sat together in the hospital room, listening to the machine's beep, watching the sun set through the window. For the first time in 3 years, Lucien Vey felt something other than guilt. He felt hope. And for the first time in her life, Zara Okoye felt like she was enough. Not because someone told her, but because she finally believed it herself. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, two broken people held each other and planned their escape. Tomorrow, they would disappear. Tonight, they were just two souls who had found each other in the wreckage. And that was enough. Mpentik. The final papers arrived a week later. New names, new passports, new lives waiting in a place where no one would find them. Lucien stood by the hospital window, dressed in borrowed clothes, staring at the documents. Marcus Reed, he read aloud. That's who I am now. Zara came up beside him. And I'm Sarah Reed, your wife. We should make that official. She looked at him. Are you proposing? Not yet. He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen. But soon. I'll hold you to that. They left the hospital together, walking out into sunshine and fresh air. A car waited at the curb, arranged by Elena, untraceable. They climbed in. The driver didn't ask questions, just pulled away from the hospital and headed toward the highway. Zara looked back through the rear window one last time. Chicago disappeared behind them. All the pain, all the blood, all the ghosts, gone. Lucien took her hand. Ready? He asked. Zara turned to face forward. Yeah, I'm ready. They drove into the unknown, together. And for the first time, neither of them was afraid. The flight landed in Lisbon just after midnight. Marcus and Sarah Reed, the names felt strange in their mouths, like borrowed clothes that didn't quite fit. Cleared customs without incident. Their new passports were flawless. Elena Torres had kept her word. They took a taxi through narrow cobblestone streets, past buildings painted in faded yellows and blues, past cafes shuttered for the night. The air smelled like salt and rain. The driver dropped them at a small apartment in Alfama, the oldest district in the city. 3rd floor. No elevator. Marcus carried their single bag up the stairs, moving slowly, his chest still tender where the bullet had torn through. Inside, the apartment was sparse but clean. Whitewashed walls, wooden floors, a kitchen barely big enough for one person, a bedroom with a window that looked out over terracotta rooftops. Sarah stood at that window, staring at the unfamiliar city sprawled below. "This is it," she said quietly. "Our new life." Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Having second thoughts?" "No, just trying to wrap my head around it." She leaned back against him. "A month ago, I was taking the bus to the Valecrest estate. Now I'm in Portugal with a fake name and a man who used to run half of Chicago's criminal underworld. When you put it that way, it sounds insane." "It is insane." Marcus pressed his lips to her temple. "You can still leave. Take your real passport. Go back to your old life." Sarah turned in his arms. "My old life was waiting for men on dating apps to decide I wasn't worth their time. My old life was exhaustion and loneliness and feeling invisible." Her eyes locked onto his. "This might be insane, but at least I'm not invisible anymore." "You were never invisible to me." "I know." She touched his face. "That's why I'm staying." They stood there in the dim light of the apartment, holding each other, listening to the city breathe around them. Tomorrow, they would start figuring out how to be Marcus and Sarah Reed. Tonight, they were still Lucien and Zara. 2 people who had survived something that should have killed them. Ich sehe geschaut. The first week was harder than either of them expected. Marcus couldn't sleep. Every noise made him reach for a gun that wasn't there. He'd wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced someone had found them. Sarah would find him standing at the window, staring out at the empty street below. "Nothing's out there," she'd say gently. "I know." "Then come back to bed." But he couldn't. Not yet. The ghosts were too loud. During the day, they explored the city, learned the language in halting, broken phrases, bought groceries from markets where no one asked questions, ate pastéis de nata in small cafes, and watched tourists take selfies by the river. They were learning how to be normal. It was strange, difficult, sometimes painful, but it was theirs. One afternoon, 2 weeks after they'd arrived, Sarah found Marcus sitting at the small table in their kitchen, staring at a piece of paper. "What's that?" she asked. He looked up. His eyes were red. "Kane's obituary. Elena sent it." Sarah sat down across from him. "What does it say?" Marcus's voice was rough. "That he was a decorated Marine, that he served his country with honor, that he died protecting innocent lives." He set the paper down. "It doesn't mention me. Doesn't mention what he really was. A consigliere. A criminal, just like me." Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. "He was also the man who saved our lives. Twice. That's what matters." "He shouldn't have had to." "No, but he chose to. That was his decision." She squeezed his fingers. "You can't carry guilt for everyone who's died because of you. It'll bury you." "I killed people, Zara." The old name slipped out without thinking. "I destroyed families, ruined lives. How do I live with that? The same way I live with killing that man in the warehouse." Her voice was quiet but steady. "You accept that it happened. You accept that you can't undo it, and you choose to do better." Marcus looked at her. "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this?" He stood and pulled her into his arms. She held him while he shook with silent grief. Outside, church bells rang somewhere in the distance. Inside, 2 people mourned a man who had saved them and learned what it meant to forgive themselves. Masag. 3 months passed. Marcus found work at a construction site. Cash under the table, no questions asked. The labor was brutal. His body ached constantly. But it was honest work, clean work. And at the end of each day, he came home to Sarah with dirt under his nails and exhaustion in his bones. Sarah took a job at a small clinic, helping with intake and translation. Her Portuguese was improving. The patients smiled at her. The doctors respected her. For the first time in her life, she felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with survival. They fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee on the tiny balcony overlooking the city. Evenings cooking together in their cramped kitchen, arguing over how much garlic to use. Nights tangled in each other, learning how to be intimate without the shadow of violence hanging over them. It wasn't perfect. Marcus still woke from nightmares. Sarah still caught herself looking over her shoulder. But slowly, the wounds began to heal. One Saturday morning, Marcus came home with a small velvet box. Sarah was reading on the couch, her feet tucked under her. She looked up when he walked in. "What's that?" she asked. Marcus sat down beside her. "Open it." She took the box with trembling hands and lifted the lid. Inside was a simple silver ring. "It's not much," Marcus said quietly. "We don't have the money for anything fancy. And I know this isn't how you imagined someone proposing, but I meant what I said in the hospital." He took her hand. "I want to make this official. I want to marry you. Not as Marcus and Sarah, as who we really are." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Lucien, but I know we can't use those names anymore. I know we're supposed to be someone else. But when I look at you, I don't see Sarah Reed. I see Zara Okoye, the woman who talked to me when no one else would, the woman who saved my life." His voice cracked. "The woman I fell in love with." Zara pulled him close and kissed him. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger. They held each other on that worn couch in their tiny apartment and let themselves believe in something they'd both thought was impossible. A future. Betsy. They were married 2 weeks later in a small civil ceremony at the Lisbon registrar's office. No guests, no music, no flowers. Just two people standing in front of a clerk, speaking vows in a language they barely understood, promising to love each other for as long as they both lived. When it was over, they walked down to the river and watched the sun set over the water. "Mrs. Reed," Marcus said. Zara laughed. "That's going to take some getting used to." "Yeah, but I like the sound of it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "What do we do now?" "I don't know. Live, I guess." "Just live. Just live." It sounded so simple, so impossible, but as they stood there watching the light fade over Lisbon, Zara realized that maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what they needed. Not redemption, not forgiveness, just the chance to exist without fear. Busing. 6 months after they had arrived in Portugal, Elena Torres sent word, a single encrypted email. All charges dropped. "You're officially dead. Stay that way." Marcus read it 3 times before he believed it. "It's over," he said. Zara looked up from the book she was reading. "What is?" "Everything. The investigation, the testimony. The feds agreed to close our files." He set the phone down. "We're ghosts. For real this time. For real." Zara set her book aside. "How do you feel?" Marcus thought about it. Relieved, terrified, guilty. Why guilty? Because I got away with it. All of it. And people like Cain didn't. Zara stood and crossed the room. She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "Cain chose to help you. He knew the risks, and he decided you were worth saving." Her voice was firm. "You don't honor his sacrifice by drowning in guilt. You honor it by living the life he gave you." "How do I do that?" "By being better than you were. By choosing kindness over violence. By waking up every morning and deciding to be the man I fell in love with instead of the man you used to be." Marcus's throat tightened. "What if I can't?" "Then I'll remind you." She kissed him softly, every single day, for the rest of our lives. He pulled her close and held on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. Because she was. A year passed, then 2. Lisbon became home. Marcus's Portuguese improved enough that he could hold full conversations. He was promoted to foreman at the construction site. The crew respected him. No one knew who he used to be. Zara enrolled in nursing school. It was hard, learning medical terminology in a foreign language, studying late into the night. But she loved it. She was good at it. And for the first time, she felt like she was building something instead of just surviving. They moved to a bigger apartment. Nothing extravagant. Just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen with actual counter space. They adopted a dog. a scruffy mutt they named Tiago. He was terrible and perfect and filled their home with chaos. They learned to cook Portuguese dishes. They argued about politics. They watched terrible movies and laughed until their stomachs hurt. They built a life. Not the life Lucien Vey would have had. Not the life Zara Okoye had dreamed of. Something smaller, quieter, real. One evening, Marcus came home to find Zara sitting on the balcony, staring at the sunset. He sat down beside her. "You okay?" "Yeah," she smiled. "I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how different everything is. 2 years ago, I was getting on a bus in the rain, heading to a mansion to take care of a man who couldn't move. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd spend the rest of my days invisible and alone. And now? Now I'm sitting in Portugal with a man who used to be a mafia kingpin, and we have a dog named Tiago who just ate my favorite shoes." She laughed. "It's insane." "Do you regret it?" Zara turned to look at him. "Not for a second." Marcus took her hand. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," she grinned. "But you're stuck with me anyway." They sat there as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Tiago barked from inside the apartment. Zara stood. "I should feed him before he destroys something else." Marcus caught her hand. "Wait. What?" He pulled her back down and kissed her, slow and deep and full of everything he couldn't say with words. When they broke apart, Zara's eyes were bright. "What was that for?" she asked. "For staying, for believing in me, for making me want to be better." "You are better. Because of you." Zara rested her forehead against his. "We're better because of each other." And in that moment, sitting on a balcony in a city halfway around the world, Marcus Reed, who used to be Lucien Vey, finally believed it. What? 3 years after they'd fled Chicago, on a warm spring evening, Zara came home with news. Marcus was in the kitchen, attempting to make bacalhau. He turned when she walked in. "How was work?" he asked. "Good, busy." She set her bag down. "I need to tell you something." His hand stilled. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She crossed the room and took his hands. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Marcus stared at her. "What?" "I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks." He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Say something," Zara whispered. His voice broke. "I don't know what to say. Are you happy?" "I don't know." He pulled his hands free and stepped back. "Zara, I lost a child. My daughter died before I ever got to hold her. The thought of going through that again, this isn't the same." "How do you know?" "Because we're not those people anymore. We're not running from killers. We're not living in a world where our child becomes a target." She moved closer. "We're just two people trying to build a life. And now we have a chance to build a family." Marcus's eyes burned. "What if I'm a terrible father?" "You won't be. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Zara took his face in her hands. "Because I've seen who you are when no one's watching. I've seen you grieve. I've seen you fight. I've seen you choose kindness over violence every single day for 3 years. Her voice softened. "You're going to be an amazing father." Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I'm terrified." "So am I." She smiled. "But we'll figure it out together." Marcus pulled her into his arms and held her while the world rearranged itself around them. A child, a family, a future he'd never thought possible. Their daughter was born on a cold December morning, 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Dark hair, eyes that hadn't decided their color yet. Perfect. They named her Elena, after the woman who'd saved their lives. Marcus held her for the first time in the hospital room, his hands shaking, tears streaming down his face. "She's so small," he whispered. Zara smiled from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "She's perfect. What if I mess this up? Then we fix it, together." Marcus looked at his daughter, this tiny, fragile life that depended on him completely, and felt something shift inside his chest. For 3 years, he'd been running from his past. Now, for the first time, he had a reason to run towards something. The first year was brutal. Sleepless nights, endless crying, diapers and bottles and exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. But there were moments. Elena's first smile, her first laugh, the way she reached for Marcus when he came home from work, tiny hands grasping at his shirt, the way Zara sang to her in the middle of the night, old songs from her childhood, her voice soft and achingly beautiful. Those moments made everything worth it. One evening when Elena was 6 months old, Marcus found Zara standing in the nursery, watching their daughter sleep. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah." She wiped her eyes. "I was just thinking about my mom. She would have loved her." Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Tell me about her." "She was strong, stubborn. She worked 3 jobs to keep us fed after my dad left." Zara's voice was thick. "She always told me I was beautiful, even when I didn't believe it." "She was right." Zara leaned back against him. "I wish she could meet Elena." "Me too." They stood there in the dim light of the nursery, watching their daughter breathe, holding each other through the grief of all the people who should have been there but weren't. Celeste, Cain, Zara's mother, ghosts, but Elena was real, and she was theirs. Years passed. Elena grew, started walking, started talking, started asking impossible questions about the world. Marcus taught her to ride a bike. Zara taught her to bake. They took her to the beach and watched her chase waves, laughing with pure, unfiltered joy. They built a life around her: birthdays, holidays, school plays, normal things, beautiful things. On Elena's 5th birthday, Marcus woke before dawn and walked down to the river. The city was still asleep. The water was dark and calm. He thought about the man he used to be: Lucien Vey, mafia kingpin, killer, monster. That man was dead. He died in a Chicago warehouse, surrounded by blood and violence and the weight of too many sins. Marcus Reed had risen from those ashes, not redeemed, not forgiven, but changed. And that was enough. He thought about Cain, about Celeste, about everyone he'd lost along the way. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the ghosts, "for everything." The river didn't answer, but as the sun began to rise over Lisbon, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace, not the absence of guilt, just the acceptance that he'd done the best he could with the wreckage he'd been given. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I'm back. That evening, they celebrated Elena's birthday at home. Cake, presents, laughter. Elena blew out her candles and made a wish. "What did you wish for?" Zara asked. "Can't tell. It won't come true." Smart girl. After Elena went to bed, Marcus and Zara sat on the balcony watching the city lights. "Do you ever miss it?" Zara asked quietly. "Miss what?" "Chicago, the power, the life you used to have." Marcus thought about it. "Sometimes. Not the violence, but the certainty, knowing who I was and what I was supposed to do. And now? Now I don't know who I'm supposed to be, but I know who I want to be." He looked at her. "A good husband, a good father, a man worth the sacrifices people made to save me." Zara took his hand. "You already are. You have to say that. You're married to me." "I don't have to say anything," she smiled. "But it's true anyway." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the city breathe around them. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "Leaving everything behind?" "No." Zara's answer was immediate. "My old life was loneliness and rejection. This life is messy and complicated and sometimes terrifying. But it's mine. It's ours." She squeezed his hand. "I'd choose it again, every time." Marcus pulled her close. "I love you." "I know." She grinned. "I love you too." They stayed there until the stars came out, 2 people who had survived the impossible and found something worth living for. Not redemption. Not forgiveness. Just love. Imperfect. Complicated. Real. And for them, that was more than enough. 10 years after they'd fled Chicago, Marcus received a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. "I thought you'd want to know. Vivian's network is completely dismantled. Every operation shut down. Every person involved either arrested or dead. The world is a little bit safer because of what you did. Thank you. E.T." Marcus read it twice, then burned it in the kitchen sink. When Zara asked what it was, he just shook his head. "The past," he said. "Letting me know it's finally over." "Is it?" "I think so." She kissed him. "Good. Then let's focus on the future." That future arrived in the form of Elena running into the kitchen, covered in paint, announcing that she'd made a masterpiece. Marcus and Zara followed her to see a canvas covered in wild splashes of color that might have been a sunset or an explosion or just the joyful chaos of a 10-year-old's imagination. "It's beautiful," Zara said. "It's us," Elena declared. "Our family." Marcus looked at the painting, bright and messy and full of life. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It is." On a quiet Sunday morning, 15 years after they'd arrived in Lisbon, Marcus and Zara walked along the beach. Elena was in university now, studying medicine, following in her mother's footsteps. They were alone again. Just the two of them. Gray was creeping into Marcus's hair. Lines had appeared around Zara's eyes. They'd aged, changed, grown into the people they'd chosen to become. "Do you ever think about telling her?" Zara asked. "About who we used to be?" "Yeah." Marcus watched the waves roll in. "Sometimes. But what would I say? That her father used to run a criminal empire? That her mother killed a man to survive? The truth is complicated. So is life." Marcus smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just didn't notice." He laughed and pulled her close. They walked in silence for a while, feet leaving prints in the wet sand. "I'm proud of us," Zara said finally. "For what?" "For surviving. For building something good out of all that darkness." She looked up at him. "For choosing to live instead of just existing." Marcus stopped walking. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, soft and slow and full of 15 years of love and struggle and survival. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," he said. "I know," she grinned. "But you're stuck with me now. Best decision I ever made." They continued down the beach, hand in hand, leaving footprints that the tide would soon erase. Behind them, the past, with all its violence and pain and blood, grew smaller. Ahead, the future stretched out like an open road, and for the first time in their lives, neither of them was afraid of where it might lead. That night, Marcus stood on their balcony, staring out at the city he'd come to love. 15 years. 15 years since he'd walked into a federal courtroom and traded his old life for a chance at something better. He thought about the boy he'd been before the violence, the man he'd become in pursuit of power, the monster he'd turned into after losing everything, and finally, the person he was now. Marcus Reed. Husband, father, construction foreman, ordinary, unremarkable, alive. The balcony door opened. Zara stepped out, wrapped in a blanket. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how far we've come." He turned to her. "About how many people died so we could be here." Zara moved beside him. "You can't carry their ghosts forever." "I know, but I owe them something." "What?" "To make sure this life was worth it. To make sure their sacrifices mattered." Zara took his hand. "They mattered. You matter. We matter." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Stop punishing yourself for surviving." Marcus closed his eyes. "I'm trying." "I know, and you're doing better than you think." They stood there in the darkness, two people who'd been broken and rebuilt, holding each other against the weight of everything they'd lost and everything they'd found. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible. For staying when you should have run. For loving me when I didn't deserve it." Zara lifted her head and looked at him. "You gave me the same gift. We saved each other." "Yeah," he smiled. "I guess we did." The city lights glittered below. Somewhere in the distance, music played. Life continued, indifferent to their story, indifferent to their pain, but they were still here, still fighting, still loving, still alive. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. They went back inside together, leaving the ghosts on the balcony, and closed the door on everything that had tried to destroy them. Tomorrow, They would wake up and do it all over again, build a life, love each other, raise their daughter, choose to be better than they were. It wasn't redemption, it wasn't forgiveness. It was just two people deciding that survival wasn't enough. They wanted to live, and so they did, together, until the very end.